Opinions editor, and I'm co-hosting with my friend and colleague, reporter Blaze Lovell. We actually talked beforehand. I said, "What are you going to wear?" He goes, "Oh, I even asked his girlfriend, what are you going to wear? You don't have to wear a suit, right? Or a tie?" And we didn't, but you guys wore jackets. That's all right. You guys are the ones running to be governor, so that's okay. Joining us today are Republican candidate Duke Aiona and Democratic candidate Josh Green. How about a round of applause? Civil Beat is a local nonprofit news site. We're dedicated to providing local investigative news across the state, and you can find all of our reporting at civilbeat.org. We are live in person at Kawaii in Mo'iliili, not far from UH Manoa, and there's an audience in here that includes Aiona and Green supporters. We're also live streaming today's event, so thank you to those who joined us online. That includes my mom. Hi, Mom. Sorry, I had to do it. This will also be posted on YouTube. I think we're actually streaming live on YouTube. And we will send out an email recap once our PAL, probably not until tomorrow. Civil Beat did call out for questions prior to today, so thank you to those who helped us with today's questions. But it's mainly me and Blaze going back and forth and talking with the man that will be the next governor of Hawaii. I have to tease myself a little bit. Earlier today, I got a booster shot, so that's my 5th shot, right? And there was a little anxiety around the office. What if I get sick? What if I have a bad reaction? I said, well, don't worry. There's going to be both a lawyer and a doctor in the house tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Blaze. Blaze has the first round of questions.
All right, guys, I got the first question, the one, not wearing socks today. So, we just wanted to start by asking both of you, and I think, Duke, I'll ask you first. Is there anything you liked about how Governor David Ige has governed the last 8 years?
It's a real tough question there, and I say that only because he's had some real tough, I guess you could say, circumstances that he's had to face. The COVID was something that I don't think anybody who's a governor would want to have, but it's also something that you anticipate as a governor, as a leader of the state. And so I understand what he had to go through. I've been there with Governor Lingo when we were in office. When we had our recession, 2006, 2007, I saw the pain that she went through, the decisions she had to make in regards to how we're going to balance the budget at that point in time. But, so what I admire about him is the fact that he's found his way through. He's had the courage to find his way through. He's made decisions that a lot of people are not happy with. A lot of people didn't agree with. But as a leader, he had to make those decisions. And I don't agree with a lot of the decisions that he made also. But I do respect his courage. I respect the fact that he stood up as a leader, and he has found his way through. So I guess, that's what I think I find most admirable about Governor Ige at this point in time. One thing I do know that, because I saw it, like I said, when I was with Governor Lingo, there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks. There's a lot of people who will tell you, what you did good and what you did bad, or what you should have done. So I understand that. I understand what he's going through. So I just want to commend him for his time in service. I want to thank him for his time in service. And obviously, like I said, we don't always agree on everything. But one thing I do know, and I learned this from Governor Lingo, is if I do get elected to be governor of the state of Hawaii, the criticism stops at that point in time. I'm not going to go and criticize my previous, my predecessor. I will comment, obviously, about things that I am now facing as governor, but I'm not going to criticize and basically, blame whatever's happening on my predecessor. I can promise you that.
We'll get into a lot more of those issues later. But Josh Green, what's one thing I guess you agreed with Governor David Ige on, and what are some of the things where you had some disagreement?
Sure. Well, thank you, Blaze. Thank you, Chad, and thank you, Duke, for being here. I would say this, being side by side with the governor the last 4 years, he had to face an existential crisis for us in Hawaii. Duke alluded to it briefly. It was life or death. When we first came into the COVID crisis in essentially January of 2020, we had projections that we would lose at least 4,000 loved ones a year if we didn't take action. And we knew that when we did take action, it was going to have a deep impact on all of our people. And those were the hardest decisions you could ever make. I think people forget that Governor lost his mom during the COVID pandemic. It was very personal for so many of us because you couldn't be with people that you loved. The decisions we made together were going to impact people's lives in every which way. But you rarely face a life or death situation, and dealing with a pandemic like this with so many uncertainties took a lot of bravery. He had to have a broad team. So to have General Hara, the directors of health, me as the coordinator and COVID liaison, innumerable healthcare heroes to go out and deal with challenges that were going to be questioned. As was mentioned earlier, every single question was up in the air because we didn't know what this particular coronavirus would do. We have an idea about them, but we didn't know this one specifically would wreak so much havoc for so long. You had to constantly have a gut check. And it was those gut checks that our administration had to make, which prepared us for the end game here. And it wasn't even just dealing with the shutdowns, it was dealing with the reboot of the economy. We had to restore trust, build through safe travels, people's businesses again, build tourism again. So it was an extremely broad task. And I think that's where we should recognize Governor Ige and our team.
Thank you, Josh. If I could just interject, as has been well established, you did speak out during these last 4 years when you had disagreements with the governor, sometimes suggesting policy changes as well. And you have said publicly that you hope to have a good relationship with your lieutenant governor, that you would welcome that criticism. But you know, it did confuse some people hearing different things. And by extension, Duke, as someone who is out there in the public, what message were you getting from the Ige administration? I'll go to Josh first and then Duke.
Well, this was a unique situation. When I was chosen to be lieutenant governor, as the first physician lieutenant governor, we couldn't possibly have imagined we would face a global pandemic. And so having that experience, being a family physician that brought me to Hawaii, being an ER doctor and still an ER doctor throughout the pandemic, I had unique experiences that were able to help inform the governor's decisions. And every good government allows itself to question itself and to push back and forth. I'm so excited to have, if we're chosen, a lieutenant governor in Sylvia Luke, who has extreme capacity, who we are already friends, and now we have a deep bond just from the last few months. But I will expect her to challenge and make me better. And I hope that I made Governor Ige better, because ultimately we had the lowest COVID rate in the country and the lowest death rate, second only to Vermont. So globally, we've been regarded as someone who did the right things by our people.
No regrets then. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Duke.
You know, I said I wasn't going to criticize once I get elected, but no, I haven't been elected. So I will criticize. And this is the real problem that I think not only myself, but a lot of people in the community have had throughout the last 2, 3, 4 years. And that was all about communication. The messages were mixed so badly that nobody knew what was going on. We didn't know if we had to stay in our homes, if we could go to the parks. We didn't, when the safe travels, we didn't even know what that was all about. But what was the policy when there was safe travels? And it started from the very beginning. So when the pandemic hit, and now we were quarantined in our own home, and then they designated who were essential workers, it was like, okay, well, how are they designating essential workers? Why is this person designated essential and this person is not? There was no communication in regards to what the basis was that for. And then when they let the big box stores open up, like Costco and Walmart and Target, but our mom and pop shops were all closed up. And yet they took probably the greatest pains to make sure that they could stay open. Sanitizing, plexiglass, tape on the ground, the mask, everything else, you know, basically limiting the crowd that could go in there. People were totally confused with that. When they could come, when they couldn't go. I mean, there's so much more to it, but I think the big thing that was the biggest confusion was who really was in charge. You know, Josh keeps saying that, you know, he was the liaison, he was the contact, but yet I didn't see that. I didn't see that at all.
We'll get to some of
If
Josh.
I-
I'll get to you
if
in
I
a
may,
second.
But there were
Duke,
many pretty caustic comments that the former lieutenant governor just made. I was the liaison. Every morning I woke up at 3 a.m. to begin the process of finding out where we had patients, where we had enough health care. Everyone knew that, and anyone who was paying attention at all during COVID knew to find me on the internet, on Instagram, on television 4 times a week. Anyone who was really engaged.
Josh, I'll get back to you in a second, but I do need to ask Duke a question. So, Duke, you just acknowledged that the governor, you know, earlier you said he made some difficult decisions.
Correct.
How would you have communicated, differently if you were governor during this time?
Absolutely. One person communicating. We had so many people communicating. We had the director of health, we had the lieutenant governor, we had the governor, we had General Hara, we had everybody communicating. That message, one thing I learned, Blaze, when I was with Governor Lingo, and we had some of our own, I guess you could say, circumstances in which we had if I recall, we had a tsunami. We also had, I think, a hurricane. But one thing that I did learn is that there's one voice directs the message, and that voice was the governor.
Outside of an emergency situation, though, how would you communicate with the public? Would you hold things like weekly press briefings? Would you as governor be the point person?
For
on most
this one,
issues?
I'm not sure. After you had a kind of a feeling of where it was and where it was going, and what the mitigating factors would be, et cetera, and you just got a better feel of it. I really believe that maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, might have been the best sequence for it. But then again, I wasn't close to the action in regards to that portion of it. But I do know that you should have had one voice, and we didn't have one voice. So we got confused. I mean, we even had the press telling us what to do. And then we throw in there the mayors and everybody in their cabinet. And it was just chaos, totally chaos. And, just don't ask me. I was a civilian, though, at this point in time. I was somebody that was actually a caretaker also, a grandfather who was taking care of his grandson in this chaotic mess that we had, also father of, children who are working and trying to get to work. And so, I went through great pains to find out, okay, what exactly are we mandated or not mandated to do, and why?
Josh, do you think there was a lot of confusion between you and Governor David Ige's messaging?
We spent a ton of time together communicating. And as I said earlier, to have a physician who is lieutenant governor, who's actually working and taking care of patients, was an opportunity for the governor. And I will just reiterate, if Duke wanted to know better, he could have easily done like another 150,000 people did, which was tap right into us. I hear all day long from people, even now that we're coming through the end of COVID, that they appreciated that kind of quick communication. The whiteboard was very real. I gave people actual data in real time because I respect people enough to do that. I did that with all of our healthcare workers. I could tell you where we had an infectious disease doctor, where we had medication, and where we had needs, and I did day after day after day. Now, to refer to this as a chaotic mess or whatever additional critical language that Duke just made is really disrespectful to the people that sacrificed so greatly, the tens of thousands of healthcare workers that were heroes out there that we were guiding one after another. To disrespect the fact that we had the best response in the country, that's a little bit much, I would say. And so I think that that's just politics. But yes, it was difficult because you have to follow the science, and it changed dynamically. That's why you had to have a team, and I would always have a team.
What do you think, Duke?
Not at
Were you
all.
attacking the
Not
healthcare
at
workers
all.
there?
I mean, to characterize it as disrespect, well, absolutely not. I'll tell you what's disrespect. Disrespect is having our EMS, our police, and our firefighters going out when the pandemic just hit, making them go out and do what they do, and they ran to the fire. They didn't back up from the fire.
How's that disrespect,
Okay.
Duke?
No, wait,
I called them heroes.
Let me finish.
And obviously, I worked with them side by
Let
side.
me
That was
finish.
respect.
Can you let me finish? Thank you. So having them do that initially and doing what they need to do, and then, I don't know how many months or years later, to tell them, the very EMS workers and the very firefighters and the policemen, that if you don't get a vaccine, you are fired. You are fired.
This is important. This is an important distinction because
And then we do want to move on.
That's disrespect.
But
That's
Duke,
Okay,
obviously,
well,
I need to address this. Duke doesn't understand what happened. That was not my decision. I did not support a mandate. I actually felt through science we should get people to choose. And if the firefighters or police chose not to get vaccinated, we give them a different role until the danger for them passes. So he happens to misunderstand what the positions were, but that's okay, because no one showed more respect and will continue to show respect for our firefighters and police. And that's why when the firefighters and the medics endorsed me, I knew that I had done the right thing by them.
Okay, let's move on. And for those in the audience, please be respectful that we're live. We don't want to favor one candidate or the other, but along these same lines of communication, which I think is the essence of being the governor, I want to move to the legislature. You had 8 years under Lingle. There were some victories, there were some defeats. cabinet appointment problems, Supreme Court Justice. Josh, you've been there for 4 years. Prior to that, you were in the ledge itself. How are you going to communicate? Because there's some pretty entrenched people over there. And I hate to tell you this, but some of them don't like either of you guys and are already thinking ahead. Gee, I don't know if I'm going to like working with an Aiona or a Green administration. So let's talk about how you're going to talk to the lawmakers, which are going to control your policy in so many ways. We'll go with Duke first and then Josh.
You know, I would hope he'd have an advantage. He was at the legislature for 14 years. He's talking about all these relationships that he had with them, how he and Sylvia now have the greatest relationship that they ever had. But that's not what I heard. But I heard a lot of things, right? So I will leave it. I'll leave the rumor to where it's at. But, you know, it's really easy, Chad. It's really about relationships. That's what it is. And I want the legislators to know from day one that I'm here to work with them. Now, obviously, we might not agree on everything, but that's how you build relationships. And I'm just hopeful that they would reciprocate that and also understand that for them to get what they need, they're going to have to work with me. For me to get what I need, I'm going to have to work with them. And we got to have, you know, this is what I'm saying. We're so broken in government, you know. This is why I'm running, because we have this moral compass that's broken. We can't discuss anything with civility anymore. If you don't agree with me, you're called names, et cetera, et cetera. We got to stop all of that. And I believe that I can bring that kind of leadership that we need right now and also bring balance to it. So with an Aiona administration, an Aiona Tupai administration, we're going to have that type of transparency. We're going to have that kind of collaboration. We're going to have that kind of credibility that we need to have between the executive branch and the legislative branch. Obviously, things are not always going to be, agreed to, but one thing will happen. We're definitely going to have transparency. And with that, I believe competition, the kind of competition that we're going to need to get more creative, more innovative, and move things along.
Thanks, Josh. And then Blaze, the next question.
So I have an extremely good relationship with my colleagues at the legislature. People who would suggest to Duke or others that I don't, that's competition, political competition before we select our nominee and so on. But having a partner in Sylvia, already working with the legislature on the $600 million that she was able to get for Hawaiian homelands, the $200 million for early pre-K, we have the values that are consistent with the legislature. We already are in coordination together on so many issues, it would boggle your mind. This is very important because really on day one, we will be able to hit the ground running and deliver on the challenges that we face, the housing challenge, the homeless challenge, affordability. We will walk into terrible gridlock if the choice was made for the other ticket. They are absolutely out of step as far as the policies goes with the values that are in the legislature. Take, for example, and I know we're going to talk about these issues, women's reproductive rights. I know Duke doesn't want to talk about it, but I'll tell you this. Reproductive rights, our team is in line with the legislature. We will protect women's reproductive rights. He will be in a position where he's in an antagonistic position. He will be vetoing them. He'll have an attorney general, if he was selected, that doesn't support their policies. That is a problem because we need to move Hawaii forward. And so I think that we've heard a lot of platitudes about working together. We would go into gridlock. We actually need to have an era of extreme cooperation, and that's why I've already reached out to any number of legislators to get ready for the future.
The abortion
Duke, you look like
question.
you're gonna say something.
You gonna let me say? You gonna let me rebut this? I gotta rebut this.
Go ahead.
Okay. What does a woman's right to reproduction have to do with affordable housing?
I'll tell you what.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll tell you what it has to do. If women feel they're unsafe in their state, they will leave. And if women felt that they were unsafe in the state of Hawaii, that they couldn't have reproductive rights, they would feel fear, and that's what they would get from an Aiona administration. We need to support women. Don't you interrupt me on this issue. We need to make sure that we have an attorney general that fights for women and protects them and our providers. We have to have a director of health that people in Kona can get access to women's health care, or else they're going to leave because they can't stand living there. And I know that from experience because I've been a physician on the neighbor islands. All of these issues are connected. And unfortunately, Mr. Aiona has forgotten what the governor actually is responsible for based on his previous comments. He says repeatedly that this is not an issue for the people of Hawaii or how the governor would address it. It is absolutely central to what a governor does.
Duke, I'll get to you, but just really briefly, I wanted to interject. You know, a lot of the issues that we've been discussing just now, it kind of highlights the divisiveness in our islands right now over vaccine mandates, over the masks, over abortion, over how to move forward. If either of you are elected governor, you're going to have to figure out how to bridge divides in our community, those divides that have grown over the years. And so, Duke, how are you going to bridge those divides?
Exactly. You know, I said again, being critical, being constructively critical. Josh, you are the greatest fear monger that we've seen in the
As
last
one-
4 years.
How is that
Dude,
constructive?
The
One-
greatest fear
how is that
monger.
constructive?
Gentlemen, if
Simple.
you could both please keep your comments about each other civil,
Oh,
please.
Okay, that's civil as far as I'm concerned
Not
because
calling me a fearmonger. That's
Oh,
not civil.
Josh, you did it during COVID.
Are you going to stop this
Can
kind
I
of thing?
can I finish now? You did it during COVID, and this is something that really upset me when you said it. And I'll never forget this because again, Josh, I wasn't involved at this point in time. I'm apolitical. I'm a grandfather. I'm a husband, father. And when you said that when you see people in line at Costco, all you see are body bags, that hit me right here. I was like, are you kidding me? What are you saying? You just struck the greatest fear in everybody's hearts. And now you're talking about how, as governor, I am totally out of step with a woman's.
Dude, could you get back to the question?
Well, that's
could you,
this part of the question right here. He's talking about how
could
this
you
thing
tell us
relates.
how? Okay, that's an example of the divides that we have in the
Okay.
community. How are you going to mend that and bridge those
Well,
divides?
again, through not bringing up issues that divide people, because that's an issue that divides people. There's no question about it. You have women on both sides of that issue. It's a very emotional, personal issue for women. And that's something that's not even relevant at this point in time in the state of Hawaii. The Supreme Court ruling that we had did nothing more than send it back to the states. And in this state, the law on abortion has never been changed, I believe, since the inception. And if it has, I think it's been minor amendments. And it's not going to be changed at this point in time either. Not that I know of, unless he knows something that I don't know. I mean, 14 years in the legislature, he's talking about that. And yet, what has he accomplished in regards to these longstanding issues that we're talking about? So when we talk about not dividing, Blaze, we don't bring up these kind of divisive issues. We don't make statements that'll be fear-mongering for the people of Hawaii. We keep it to the issues and we stick to the
But
issues.
some issues naturally will be
Sure,
divisive, and you
sure.
need to find ways
Sure.
to, bridge those gaps. How are you
And
gonna do that?
we listen accordingly, and we try to keep it as civil as we can. As somebody who's done mediations throughout my life, I understand what it means to have people caucus and then come together, and then we try to just
Okay.
find our way to a
Josh,
compromise.
I do know you want to respond. You did say that on TV. We did hear that remark. Your response to what he said.
So actually, I did what I could to unite people, and in ways that people may never completely understand. We were facing a pandemic that was taking the lives of our elders. And when we were recklessly not intervening, not getting people to safety, that's when I had to be very candid and direct. It's better to be honest. It's better to be direct with people. That was not divisive. That was not divisive against people who chose to be vaccinated or not to be vaccinated. That was a statement to say, you are in great harm's way. And I did that consistently for the better part of 2 years. It's not divisive to speak about the most important issues like Blaze just commented. Actually, when we talk about issues as governor, we have to lead and express to people that we will take on the largest issues, that we will fight for people irrespective of ideology. I made sure that I respected people, even if they chose ultimately to take a different course of action during COVID. It was not easy, and everyone was vulnerable, so I had to be honest and direct. It is not honest and to be dismissive of the large issues. That is not honest.
Okay. I can't help but raise some of the very same issues. I mean, the tension in our community is right here between you two gentlemen who are sitting next to each other. TMT on Mauna Kea, the wind farms in Kahuku, solar development, Waipio Valley, there's a standoff there. We can go from island to island with these things. And I think Blaze is trying to get at this core frustration, especially coming out of COVID, especially after a tough time nationally and internationally. How do you reach out to someone like each other and make amends?
On this issue right here, he just admitted to what I just said. He said, we agree to disagree. I see what his perspective is. I totally disagree with that. Many other people disagree with that. We can walk away because we're not going to get anywhere with just going back and forth on this.
85% of the people got
We agree.
vaccinated, Duke.
Okay.
85%?
85% of those who were eligible got vaccinated.
All
They
right.
took the path that we proposed, and we respected the others because we did not ultimately, in my opinion, force people to do what they didn't want to do, because that was not my position. There are differences between me and Governor Ige, and I respect them. I'm respectful enough to not air dirty laundry.
Blaze.
Can I just go back to that one he just said about
If we're
the
going to have a
mandates?
constant, we might as well not have.
That was not his position.
That
I
was
mean,
not
he
my
was
position.
you were
Real
so
briefly,
vocal
dude.
during this whole.
To be
this whole-
vaccinated, not
you
for
were so
mandates.
vocal.
Okay,
I was
okay,
vocal
okay,
to save
hold on,
lives,
hold
sir.
on. So, gentlemen, I'm really not hearing a lot of plans of how you would really mend these divides in our community. You're arguing with each other right now on the stage. One of you is going to be governor, and one of you is going to have to, face these hard truths that we need to bridge these divides in our community. But I'm just not hearing that from either.
Let me share with you
How are you
how I
gonna
would do
do
on
it?
TMT, for example, okay? Very divisive issue, right? It has divided us along ethnic lines. Our people who are Hawaiian have been hurt, and they have protested on Mauna Kea. I went up there as a conciliator to make sure people were feeling respected and to be heard. And what I feel, in order to break impasses like that, is we keep our promises. We go forward by, for example, making sure the promises we've kept on Department of Hawaiian Homelands are kept. There are 28,000 individuals who are on the list. There's 203,000 acres. That property, that land should be dispositioned. People should then feel trust and respect. We go forward with the Mauna Kea Authority and we listen to one another. We listen to our loved ones. We go there in a gesture of respect, which is what I did to go on Mauna Kea. And that's how we begin to rebuild trust. And that's how I tend to approach things. It is difficult because people do have strong feelings about this, but that is the kind of respect I will offer as governor.
You want the TMT built?
Excuse me?
Do you want the TMT built?
What I want is us to have so much respect between the Hawaiian people and everyone else who wants to build it, because I believe in science and astronomy, that they say, yes, we have an honored space. It's sacred on the top of the mountain. We honor that. And the people who have otherwise protested say, and yes, change the footprint, build the TMT for the good of mankind, because we've demonstrated respect throughout the process on other issues which are very relevant. People who are protesting on TMT right now are not anti-astronomy. They're objecting to being disrespected for a generation.
Okay, Duke, on TMT?
There's a process in place right now. I want to respect that process and see how it plays out. I've said this before, and my position hasn't changed. If I break it down into two parts. The first is the building part of it. So if they cross their T's and dot their I's on the building part of it, okay. And the second part is exactly what was mentioned in regards to this new, I believe it's called a stewardship committee that was just put together by the legislature. I believe that has about 5 years to form and to make itself become the authoritative management and stewardship body for Mauna Kea. And they will make the ultimate decision, I believe. And so let the process play itself out. I will be a mediator in regards to whatever needs to be done. But one thing that shouldn't have done, I think it was handled not in the most pono way in regards to how protesters were handled and how protesters handled authority also.
Okay, we're at the halfway mark. Breathe. I have a question for each of you, and you can chime in, as I expect you probably will. Duke, you're a man of faith. There are many voters who share that faith, who like your views, but others worry that your faith may influence your policies. So how are you, if you become governor, going to balance religious interest and under the concept of separation of church and state?
Yeah. I think we understand what the parameters are. I have a track record. I don't believe there's any instance in which I have done that, where I have imposed my faith, my beliefs as a mandate from my office as lieutenant governor, or even as a judge. So I understand the parameters. I am a man of the rule of law, and of course I abide by what the constitutional provisions say in regards to basically its establishment of religion. So I do pray. I am a man of faith, and I'm praying every single day for the state of Hawaii and the nation and the world, because we do have a lot of issues that we got to get through.
Thank you. Josh, this is for you. The Republican Party, your opponent, has made much about corruption under the Democratic Party. You will lead that party if you become governor. Is your party corrupt?
Okay, first, I'd like to say we're all people of faith in this state, and I'm a person who's part Jewish, part Russian Orthodox, married to a woman who's Church of Latter-day Saints who I love. We pray, and we all pray for our state. We all bring our faith differently, whether we wear it on our sleeve or not. Now, regarding corruption, there's been corruption in politics, and it's terrible. People who have committed crimes should be punished, should go to jail. In a green administration, we'll have zero tolerance for ethical lapses, for crimes that are committed. I've already planned to augment the Attorney General's office to make sure that we have the capacity to actually have the highest standard. And anyone in my administration, if we're chosen, who does anything of the sort would be gone immediately. Now, it's challenging, right? Because we've seen this all across the country. We've seen incredible ethical lapses at the highest level. Under the Trump administration, for example, it was terrible. And so we've seen this in our country. We need to actually come together in a less political way, I would say. So I wouldn't characterize it as party. I would say it is a human problem. But Jamie and I always try to live at the highest ethical standard, and that's what you get from me as governor.
There is just one party that's been in control, however, largely since statehood.
Well, the reason for that is because our party is much closer ideologically and from a value standpoint to the people of Hawaii. And I know I knew that question would come up. But the truth is, if you believe what the people believe, then you end up getting selected. And that comes to all of the issues. I won't relitigate them until you ask another question about which specific issue to honor you. But when you focus on those issues in a way that the people respond based on their values and your values, that's why the majority party is that.
Is that true?
I beg to differ with being, I guess the inference, he didn't say it, but I guess the inference is that Republicans are out of step with the values of the people of Hawaii. Josh, I don't know about you, but I'm born and raised here, man. I got deep roots in this state. I got a family that goes deep on both sides. I don't know about you, but I am Keiki Aiona. I don't know about you, but I just came back from Waipio Valley, where I met with those people who are definitely impacted by it. We had a great session. I can't tell you how emotional it was to come back to my roots. I said, I'm coming back to my roots right now, my Native Hawaiian roots. And I got the aloha. It was in my na'au where I said, this is it. You guys are doing it the right way. They talked about having love. They talked about having peace. And they talked about having forgiveness in their hearts. That's what they wanted out of that whole situation there. It's not about keeping people out and blocking access and keeping the valley to themselves. It was about what I just said, because they said, look, enough with the fighting. I'm not a warrior anymore. I just want to make peace, and I want to have love.
Yeah.
And so, when you say
Yeah.
Republicans are out of step in regards to the values of the people of Hawaii, nothing could be more wrong and incorrect than that. That's just an incorrect
There's so many
statement.
things to correct here, Chad. First of all, it is offensive when Duke tries to play a card as though he is local and therefore more connected to people, and to go from Republican to he's Hawaiian and therefore he's more connected to people. I came to Hawaii to care for people with the National Health Corps. All of my ohana became the Hawaiian community and the Filipino community on the Big Island, who I would give my career and life for. And then my family is all from here. So I don't divide people along that line like he just tried to do. What I'm speaking about is ideologies. And I think it is absolutely clear that the people of Hawaii value individual freedoms that are protected by the Democrats in this case, and by my ticket, in this case, myself and Sylvia. People respond to the fact that we believe that everyone has a right to a house, that everyone should have their religion respected, or their who they love is respected, or how they want to have their bodies respected. These are human questions. These are not questions that should be divided the way he just tried to do. That is a historic, very awful thing that was just done. And I am disappointed, but that's okay.
Understood. Blaze.
Can I respond to that?
I think I was
Blaze,
responding to him.
Blaze,
and
you
so-
wanted
and so
to
it's
know
not
how I was
appropriate
gonna-
that he continued
how
to
we're
try
gonna
to
handle
talk over
this
me.
kind of
Okay, you wanna
differences?
move
You're
on
talking
talking
now.
over each other, and so
Yeah.
we can't hear. Duke, very briefly,
Sure.
and then to Blaze.
How he said, how are we gonna handle disagreement? I'm just gonna let that pass. Let his comments speak for itself, and let the people decide what just transpired here in regards to what was said.
Okay,
I agree to disagree. How's that?
we do
Is that
need
good
to-
for you, Blaze?
Yes.
Okay,
thanks,
thank
Duke.
you.
We do need to move on. And, there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of issues that the state has faced over the years that seem to never get solved, and people get really irritated about that. Things like homelessness, affordable housing inventory, help for businesses, agriculture, energy. I could, run down the list and we'll be here all night. But what, really can you do as governor if if you're facing reluctance from the legislature or budget constraints? What are you going to be able to really do? Josh, I'll start with you.
Thank you. There's a lot that can be done. I have extensive plans on all of these issues for the people to study and see. I've also already begun to collaborate with the legislators because if they feel that they're going to have me as their partner, they want to hit the ground running. On homelessness, we build Kauhale, 12 villages for people to come off of the street if they are mentally ill, have had traumatic brain injury. We've seen 2 examples already work. We do that. Plus, we do other things. We rebuild the mental health care system. You will see that in my first budget. This is how you address homelessness as a health consideration.
We don't need you to reiterate your whole platform. People, we're familiar with your.
Except I'm the only one with a
strategic
platform,
points.
and I wanted to express that we have these
We're
plans.
more interested in knowing how you would navigate the issues. We know the specific points.
Okay, specifically to the
but
legislature.
how would you navigate these things?
Yes, so I will submit legislation from the executive branch and partner directly with the chairman and chairwomen of each committee to also submit similar legislation so that we move forward with one voice. And that will be an opportunity and advantage I have between my team, which would include Sylvia Luke, who's been a prominent legislator these last 20 some years, but the last 4 as well.
Interesting, Blaze, he's been a legislator for 14 years. And all of these things that he's talking about, it never came to fruition. And these are long-standing issues that we're talking about. So how do you get it through? I mean, I saw how Governor Lingo got it through. It's called collaboration. It's called making them a part of the solution. And so you have ideas, you have initiatives, you have programs, you have solutions. The legislators need to be a part of it. And so you bring them into the solution and you discuss and you collaborate and you listen and you go back and forth. One thing that the governor has that's so vital in regards to tools that you have as a governor is the power to convene and the power of the bully pulpit. And that means the people behind of you. Whoever gets elected has that power in regards to the people electing them to be the governor of the state of Hawaii. I would submit that if I were elected governor, that's a huge statement by the people of Hawaii that they want change. They want the status quo broken. And more importantly, they want us to work together. They want this spirit of aloha to be real and alive in government. And that's how you work it, Blaze. It's really about that, showing that you are a leader and showing that you can listen to people.
If you run into conflict with those legislative leaders, though, and they just won't take up your initiatives, is there anything that you could do, whether through state rulemaking or executive authority, that you could move some of your
Well,
things
sometimes
forward?
you might have that opportunity to have some kind of executive authority, right? Through policies, through regulations, et cetera, right? Administrative rules. You may have that ability to do it. But we're talking about the big issues, right? And the big issues are what you just mentioned, housing and homelessness. And so it's really about, you need to work with the legislators, and not just with the legislators per se, but also with the county legislators and the mayors. And this is where it becomes so important. Like I was saying, the power to convene and the power to use that bully pulpit in the right way makes a tremendous difference. But you mentioned other things, like I said, administrative rules, some policies that you could invoke, unilaterally as the executive branch could always be used. But you have to be very careful. What you have to be careful about is that you don't over leverage. So you're not coming down as that big bully or that big dictator that's telling the legislators what to do. Because no matter what the party, Democrat or Republican, right, they want to see things happen. They want credit for it. Great, you can have credit for it, okay? We'll give you the credit. Don't worry, it's not all about the administration. So whatever it takes to make things move, I'm all for it.
We'll get back to the counties in a second, but Josh, same question for you. What could you as governor do without the legislature?
Well, there's a lot of things. For example, you can work with the private sector also, and we demonstrated that could be done. I worked with the private sector for the COVID response. Every hospital executive, every chief operating officer, nurses in the community, we rallied together to augment the government, support the Department of Health, and do what was necessary. When we built Kauhale, We went and got resources from the private sector and had some public sector resources from the Public Housing Authority to build one building while we built another 36 right around it. So there are many ways to collaborate. And I do bring people together. That's been a strength of mine, to bring resources. I also have a very good working relationship with the mayors. So this is one of the many ways the executive branch can function. I'm already in constant contact with the current legislature to make sure, though, that we come in as one voice and one force for the good of the people of Hawaii.
You know, you mentioned the county mayor's home rule is honored in this state, in the counties. We also saw during COVID where the various mayors were going in different directions in the administration. You mentioned that you have a good relationship. Are there people in the counties that you would look to bring into your administration?
The answer is yes, in some cases, but I also want to honor the mayors because they have extraordinary teams. I love working with them and their chief agency members because I've already been doing that for the last 4 years, and we had to do that day in and day out. Now, of course, there are going to be occasional differences because the mayors know even better than the governor. They're a little closer, just a little closer to their constituency. And so they can give us that kind of extra input about what matters. And the same can be said, of course, of the senators and representatives and council members. But yes, I think there will be a lot of kind of knowledge-based experience that comes into our administration.
I do want to ask you about that. And of course, I guess what I'm getting at here is that the complaint you hear over and over again from the counties is it's too Honolulu-centric here, that once you get in the state capitol at the ledge, you're not really caring about that. I know that you're from the Big Island originally, you're from Oahu, but what about you, Duke? Have you started to look to who you might hire to be in your administration?
No, absolutely not. I have been just going around the state and talking to various, nonprofits, organizations, individuals, and just getting their feedback on all of the concerns that they have, all the issues that they're facing, and just collaborating with them. What I intend to do once we get elected, if we get elected, is to form what I would call, I guess you could say, a transition team that would basically and have people apply for the directorships in particular, because that's most important, is putting that cabinet together immediately.
But as you know, it's a quick turnaround.
Oh, it is, absolutely.
November the 8th,
Absolutely.
you're sworn in early December. You
Right.
got to get a budget to the
Right.
legislature a few weeks
Right.
later. Josh, you must be looking at people right now to hire.
Yes, absolutely. And when I say that, I say I've formed a group of senior advisors. We meet with almost daily. We talk about what our priorities are. Some of them will recommend people from across the state, from the public sector and private sector. We would never be so presumptuous as to think that we have been selected for anything till after the election. But you have to do that if you're going to be responsible. One of the concerns I have is that we've been preparing for 2 years. 2 years to lead, if chosen, on these large issues that you've mentioned. And to try to race it at the end is very dangerous, in my opinion. Not dangerous as in a bad thing, just you don't have enough time to get ready for all of the great challenges, and then to go and try to patch together a cabinet without that extra time, consideration, thought. I think that you could end up either making mistakes or not getting the best people. So I think it's important that as we campaign and reach out to people, that we're also considering who the best people from across our state will be.
Duke?
Yeah, he just said that he was not too presumptuous to think that they're going to win the race. Well, I heard differently. I heard they already have their transition team in place, headed by none other than the former governor, Neil Abercrombie, who's leading that charge. They've already selected people, and I know that by some anecdotal stories that I've heard. But the bottom line is this: he's saying you can't do it. You just can't. I saw Governor Lingle do it. I saw how she did it. I'm going to replicate that model. And she got her cabinet picked within that first month. And I believe every single one of the nominations that she submitted to the legislature were confirmed. And so we had that cabinet in January. We had our budget in also. We amended the budget. We're going to inherit the budget that obviously the current administration has. We need to change it before it gets there if we can see what needs to be changed. But you can also make amendments during the legislative session. Be difficult, but we'll do what we have to do.
Josh, you're going to bring Neil Abercrombie out of retirement?
No. I respect Governor Abercrombie, Governor Wahei, Governor Cayetano, Governor Lingle, the governors and Governor Ariyoshi that have been there before us. But Duke, that's just an error. That is not correct at all about who's on my, quote, transition team. What is true is I have my family the people that love me to advise me, the people that have been working with me for these 2 years to try to move Hawaii forward. Of course they are advisors. Of course they are helping me to see what the future should look like. Planning is important. Mr. Aiona got into the race on the last day. The last day. I've been working through these processes, whether it was COVID or any number of issues, for the last 2 years toward this because it's that important. So I will just say this. Speculation, we're a small state, Coconut Wireless, of course, but his Coconut Wireless is just not correct. In this case, I'm happy to share more about my advisors over time, but these are great people, some conservative, some liberal, some moderate, all parties. It's been amazing. Some of the cabinet members from the Aiona and Lingle administration have even reached out to me already, and that's extraordinary.
Okay, we're about 47 minutes into this discussion, and this election season kind of feels like it went on for 47 years. But given that, you both have had plenty of time by now to hear each other's positions on things and hear your policy points. And Duke Aiona, is there anything you'd agree with Josh Green on? Don't take too long.
Yeah. You got to give me some time on that one, really seriously. And I don't mean it in a negative way. I really don't. It's just that I think you made the assumption that we've heard each other speak, and I really haven't. I mean, look, this is the first public appearance that we've had together. I've been waiting for this. In fact, we've reached out to Josh. I mean, not to Josh, but
I mean, surely by now you've seen him in various forums or read his materials. Is there anything that you think?
I think we have policies on the same issues. He has a program for housing. I have a solution for housing. I don't know if you call that agreeing, but yeah, I think we've identified the same, I guess, issues that are of a priority with the state of Hawaii: housing, inflation, the economy, taxes. I think that's what we may agree on. Is that correct?
I'll share a few things. I think that Duke and I agree that the cost of living is too high. We've both proposed over the years that we get rid of the tax on food and medicine. Both of our teams have talked about a pathway to ownership, although I do believe you have to be specific and you have to actually fund 5% of the down payments to get the banks to be able to engage. I have more specifics. We agree, though, that we should get our local families housing. I actually have a great deal of respect for Duke's work on SBIRT in the past, which is work in hospitals to help people get off of drugs. Good work. He came to me when he was lieutenant governor and I was the health chair and asked me to support those things, and I did. So there's lots of good ideas that come from their team. I do think there are fundamental ideological differences, which I know we've talked about some, and I'll talk about them much more on Wednesday. Again, I'll talk about them in interviews with the other networks as those things come up. I actually have a lot of respect when people bring their belief and faith to help people. I just think that you have to also include all people, and I don't think that that's often done, but I don't want to be critical, because the question is, what do we agree on? And I think we agree there should not be homeless individuals. We probably disagree on how we get there.
When you were health chair in the House, was there anything that the Lingle administration did, or the lieutenant governor, when he was lieutenant governor, did that you liked, that you agreed with?
Yes, in fact, Governor Lingle and I had a very good working relationship. I don't know if it was our faith that created somewhat of a bond, but she had come to me and had surrogates come to me, some of whom who work with me today, to ask me to submit bills that were otherwise getting killed really quickly by people who were more partisan than myself. And I was honored to help with some of those administrative bills when I thought they were good ideas. And like I said earlier, Duke had made a point of trying to engage people when they were drug sick, when they were having problems in the emergency department. I liked that proposal because that's what I actually do. I was actually living that life and helping people day to day, patient to patient in that area. So I don't ever dismiss ideas just because a different political party brings them up. I dismiss ideas only if they're going to hurt people. And so that's my approach. It's not particularly partisan for me.
Duke Aiona, Governor Lingle brought you into the fold a lot when dealing with the legislature. Was there anything about how Josh Green handled the health committee that you liked?
To be honest, I don't recall Josh being the chair. I think it was in 2010, was it, Josh? You were the health chair?
I was the chair for many years. I was chair after just serving 2 years in the House, which was 2005, 6, and I became the chair in the House 7 and 8. And then after going to the Senate after 2009, 10, I became the chair for better part
So
of
that
a
would have
decade.
overlapped with your administration.
Yeah, but I don't recall that. I just, I'm not saying that he wasn't. I'm just saying I don't recall that. So I don't recall. I know when we were elected in 2002, Governor Lingo asked me if I could help with the methamphetamine problem that we had at that point in time, which was declared an epidemic by some. And of course, my work in drug court was a primer for that, and was a perfect fit for me. And we attacked it, and as it never been done before from a state level. We had a summit. We brought together the various service providers out there, and we made tremendous progress as far as I was concerned in regards to addressing that issue. We put together a task force, or I should call it a group of different community organizers, so we could break down the silos that were out there in regards to the different providers and organizations that were providing assistance for the many services that were needed for these people who were hooked on methamphetamine. But we really focused on the preventive measures, on the preventive side, as opposed to on the treatment side. But not that we did not, because that was drug court was all about. It was all about the treatment side.
Okay, did you guys ever talk to each other during the 8 years of the Lingo Aiona administration? I'm just curious, did you ever cross paths?
Maybe minimally. I spoke directly to Governor Lingo most of the time.
I don't recall.
Okay, let's move on. We only have about 8 minutes. I, by the way, could go on and on. To me, this has been fascinating. But Duke, you and I were talking about this a little earlier, and it alludes to something that I think both of you should comment. Why has there been so little attention on the general election? There were so many debates and primaries. There were polls, TV interviews, the super debate, and so forth. When are you guys getting together again so that we can see more of this?
I'm with you 100% on that, Chad, and I appreciate that. That's why I told you when I went up and shook your hand that I appreciate what you guys are doing, because you're allowing the people of Hawaii to get a side-by-side comparison of both of us. This is the general election. I'm not saying that the primary wasn't important, but we had more attention in the primary than we're having right now. And I'm looking at him right now, and I'm saying, Josh, let's make it happen. I'll clear my calendar, and we can talk to the various stations. Instead of having interviews, let's have, I like this format. I like this conversational style. I think that's great. So KITV can do it. HNN can do it. You let me know what day you want to do it, and let's do it. I mean, I'm open right now.
Okay, that's good to hear. First of all, what is coming up between the two
I'll
of you?
share with you.
Go ahead, Josh.
So thank you. So first of all, yes, we had a very dynamic primary. Had excellent competition in Congressman Kahele, former First Lady Cayetano, are top-notch people. And we spent enormous numbers of hours in front of TV doing all of these conversations. And it was very gratifying.
Duke had 10 opponents in his primary.
I think they only I only saw one debate on TV, so I don't know what else they did. We are going to be together again Wednesday on KHON.
Okay.
And, I actually accepted the Insights debate, but they were unable to get us together on the schedule. And so I made it very clear. Also, I have done the job interview with Hawaiian News Now, a very dynamic interview, which you guys were a part of. And forgive me.
Something you did turn down.
That was the primary. That was in the primary.
had his
And here we are
opportunity to
right
share.
now. And, we're not talking about individual interviews. We're talking about a side-by-side
But I am
comparison.
hearing both of you saying that you could possibly clear your schedule to have more of these forums so that we
I'm
can see
there.
you guys.
I am there.
We reached out in that way. And
It's 5 weeks from tomorrow is the election. Is
Exactly. Exactly.
It's time.
And we'll be together the day after tomorrow. And I've been traveling the state now for a year, making sure I'm with people day in and day out, morning, noon, and night, to make sure they understand what my policies are, which we've promoted vast, detailed policy, which we haven't seen. If you go to the websites, please compare them. Compare the extensive nature of our discussion of issues with our opponents. And it's their prerogative to share that way or not share, but we've chosen to share where we stand on the issues.
We're going to start wrapping things up here. We're coming up on the closing time, but I wanted to ask, is there anything that people aren't asking you, or what's the one question you feel like people should be asking in this race? Do go on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the question that you didn't ask tonight was about leadership style. What differentiates me from my opponent? And I'd like to comment on that if I can.
Sure, briefly.
Sure. I got into this race. He mentioned it. I got into it late. It wasn't because of, it was a very difficult decision. It wasn't something that I did because I felt like I needed to achieve something, that I needed status, that I needed to have credibility with anybody. It was because at that point in time, I felt, based on what I had been through in my lifespan. By the way, I'm a lot older than my opponent, almost a generation older than him. I've had the blessings of being a judge for 12 years, an attorney for over 40 years now, basically as a litigator and a mediator. I'm a grandfather of 8, I'm a husband of 41 years, and of course, lieutenant governor for 8 years. I felt that all of that put together was what we needed at this point in time in regards to leadership. As I mentioned earlier, we have a broken moral compass. The spirit of aloha has dissipated to the point where we have no trust. We have no respect in regards for government, and that needs to be brought back. The corruption that we're facing right now has caused just a tremendous divide within this community. And from my perspective, that is because of the one-party dominance that we've had in this state for the last almost 60 years now, since the beginning of statehood. And it's all because when you have that kind of dominance, it breeds abuse. It breeds corruption. And this is why I decided to run. And my leadership will be one of collaboration. It'll be one of unification. It'll be one of bringing wisdom and skill and listening and discussing and making sure that when we come to the table, we all have a seat at the table,
Okay, Duke,
not just special
I just
interests.
wanted to give Josh the opportunity to answer the same question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just one second. So Josh, the question was, same question to you. What's the question that no one's asking you in this race?
The question is rarely asked, how one person like me transitioned from being a physician leader to becoming a legislative leader, lieutenant governor, and if people will have me governor. I came to Hawaii with the National Health Corps. That was a set of experiences to see and care for people. We need leadership that we can trust, that cares about people. And that's been from what I've been told, people reflect on to me and feel from me. And so it is from that space, that I have moved towards becoming a leader. And I will tell you this, no one respects the people more than I, because I see them in their greatest moments of crisis. I know where they struggle, what they wrestle with as a physician, and then going through the crisis that we faced, or even when we went to Samoa and we dealt with a crisis of measles there. These were not constituents. These were human beings that the people of Hawaii could help with. So leading by example, having been a physician leader for decades, working as a physician while being a legislator, made me a better human being, made me a better legislator, and then a better lieutenant governor. People rarely ask for that origin story. And I will say that is why I am so honored to be welcomed by so many people after all that we've gone through. Being a physician and then seeing the challenges of our state through that lens has really made me a better person, a better leader.
Well, I want to thank the both of you. This has been really quite an hour. Go ahead, please give a round of applause. And I was going to ask about Aloha Stadium. There's not enough time. Thank you, Duke Aiona. Thank you, Josh Green. Thank you, Blaze Lovell. And thank you all for being here today, both in the audience here at Kawaiʻi as well as home watching. You can watch us, the Know Your Candidate series posted on the website. We have an elections guide, a very good one, on our website. Thank you to everyone who joined us here tonight. Take care, drive safely, and don't forget your shoes. Take care.
Thanks, guys.